Have you ever noticed how some people seem to hold a quiet power over everything happening around them? And they don't even have to say a word. They don't raise their voices. They don't beg or explain. They simply step back, and everything shifts. The air in the room changes. People start to question, to reach out, to wonder what's going on. Now imagine if you did that. Imagine if you stopped reacting instantly to everything. If you chose silence instead of a quick answer. If you stepped away instead of exploding. What do you think would happen? This is where the real point begins. When you're not always emotionally, physically, or mentally available, the world around you starts to wobble, because people are used to holding control over you by pulling on your reactions, your impulses, your predictable moves. But the day you decide to pull back, the game changes completely. Those who thought they understood you realize they barely knew you at all. Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about other people can lead to a better understanding of ourselves. Think about that for a moment. When you suddenly become harder to reach, who gets restless? Who gets upset? Who tries to poke at you just to pull some reaction out? This reveals more about them than it does about you. And it shows how much you've been letting yourself be managed without even seeing it. You keep giving pieces of yourself to please others, to keep peace, to hold on to people who deep down were never truly with you. With each forced yes, each instant reply, each emotional outburst, you hand over a bit of your energy. And what's left at the end of the day? You feel drained, frustrated, empty in a way you can't even name. The reason why is simple. You've been too available for people who don't even deserve a moment of your quiet. This isn't about shutting the world out or turning your back on people. It's about picking yourself first. It's about learning what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, real, complete. That process begins when you realize silence can be stronger than 1,000 arguments. Stepping back, when it comes from clarity and not from fear, is a true act of power. So now I'll ask you, how long will you keep letting other people control your emotions? How long will you act like a puppet, jumping every time someone touches your wounds? Maybe it's time to cut the strings, to step back, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being so available, everything shifts. From childhood, most of us have been taught to always be present, to respond right away, to please, to say yes even when we wanted to say no. We were trained to believe our worth is tied to how much we give and how easy we are to reach. But here's a truth most people never tell you clearly. This constant availability isn't a virtue. It's a cage. As long as you think you have to be reachable all the time, whether emotionally or otherwise, you will be used, drained, and forgotten the moment you're no longer useful. Do you know why? Because being always available makes you predictable. And predictable things quickly become tools. People start to treat you like an emotional emergency button. They push it when they want attention, comfort, or validation, and then they put you back on the shelf. You don't notice it because you're stuck in the illusion that being there for everyone will make someone be there for you. But it doesn't work that way. Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, loved, and recognized. It's exactly this mask that keeps you overly available. You say it's okay while you're suffocating. You reply to messages instantly even when you're exhausted. You explain yourself, justify yourself, defend yourself as if you owe the world an answer. But here's the truth. The more you put yourself at the center of other people's stage, the more you fade from your own. Being always available is a quiet form of abandoning yourself. It's a hidden way of seeking approval, dodging rejection, trying to control how people see you. But that control has a price. The price is your peace. It's your life force being spread around like it's endless, when in fact it's not. People who demand your constant availability don't actually want you. They want what you give: validation, company, distraction, emotional support. But the moment you change, the moment you draw a line, the moment you stop reacting on command, those same people get annoyed. They criticize you. They call you weird or distant. It's not because you've changed, it's because you've stopped being useful for them. And here's the hardest truth: the more available you are, the less you're valued. What's too easy to get becomes an emotional rag. Nobody respects what they don't have to earn. Nobody values what's always there. So stop and ask yourself right now, who truly deserves your time? Who deserves your attention, your presence, your listening? Or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before you can answer that, you need to understand something crucial. Why do we react so much? Why do we give in so easily? What's behind this automatic need to respond, justify, and please? The answer lies in what Jung called psychic energy. And that's what we're starting to uncover now. Your energy is all you've got, and if you don't learn to protect it, someone else will use it against you. Jung didn't see the human mind as a machine reacting to stimuli with no consequences. He saw it as an energy system where every thought, every emotion, every action burns a bit of that energy. The real question is, are you deciding where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react without thinking, you're spilling psychic energy. When you defend yourself against a pointless criticism, when you respond to a provocation just to prove you're right, when you argue about things that don't matter, when you bend over to please people who don't even value you, you're spending your inner strength on things that don't feed you. Jung said it clearly, what you resist persists. The more you react, the tighter you bind yourself. People who live drained of emotion aren't weak, they're simply misdirected. And you know what happens to someone who lives exhausted? They become vulnerable. And vulnerability without boundaries is dangerous. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally needy people can sense it. They see you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix the world, and they take advantage. Jung believed a healthy psyche is one that knows how to hold its energy within. This means learning how to say no without guilt, staying quiet without feeling like a coward, watching before acting. True power isn't in reacting. It's in choosing when and how to act, and you can only do that when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses. How many nights have you lost sleep over an unfinished conversation? How many hours have you spent going over what you should have said, or trying to figure out why someone treated you badly? That's energy leaking with no return. You're keeping a live ghost that should have faded long ago. You're feeding dynamics that only exist because you keep responding. Psychic energy works like a force field. When it's protected, it gives you presence. You walk into a room and people feel it without you saying a word. But when it's mismanaged, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world doesn't spare those who give themselves away too easily. This is why you have to start noticing your own triggers. What makes you react without thinking? What knocks you off center? These are the exact spots where your energy leaks, and that's where you need to focus, not to turn cold or indifferent, but to become selective, to rule yourself. And here's one of Jung's biggest insights. When you conserve your energy, you break the projections other people throw at you, and that upsets them deeply, because now you're stepping into a territory few want to face, the quiet game of manipulation. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how opportunistic people feed off your energy and why becoming less available completely disarms their games. Get ready to see clearly the faces of those who've been draining you without you noticing. You think you're in control. You think your reactions are your choices. But the truth is far darker. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who know this can play you easily. Opportunistic people don't have to yell, threaten, or force situations. They just push the buttons you've left exposed, and you react every time. Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism through which people place onto others what they can't face in themselves. But there's another side of this no one talks about. While others project onto you, you also become the container for these images, and the more emotionally open you are, the more you become a blank screen for these projections. Think of that friend who only calls when they're in crisis, that partner who always expects you to fix everything, that person who praises you but only while you're useful to them. None of that happens by chance. They're not relating to you, they're relating to the idea of you, the role you've agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you're afraid of disappointing, afraid of not being loved, afraid of being left alone. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen with yelling, it happens in silence, in guilt, when you feel you owe someone, when you think you must always help, must always understand even while it destroys you inside. That's where they hold you. And here's the key point. Manipulators don't have to control you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But the moment you stop reacting, the whole game breaks. When you start saying no, when you answer with silence, when you step back instead of explaining yourself, their projections start to collapse. The mask they put on you falls off. And this unsettles people because they no longer know who you are. Worse, now they're forced to face themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. Your unavailability feels like a threat because it forces others to meet their own emptiness. The silence you give them makes them hear the noise inside themselves. And that's when the attacks, the criticism, the drama start. Not because you're wrong, but because you've stopped being their convenient mirror. Jung said, "We don't become aware by imagining light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you pull back, when you stop feeding the cycle, the hidden side of others starts to show." And that's unbearable for people who've been using you as an escape. But what about you? Are you ready to handle the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to face the silence that comes after you step away? Because it's in that very silence that a new kind of power begins to grow. And that is where we'll continue in the next part. We'll uncover why silence can be the most powerful tool of the human mind and how it completely shifts the way you deal with the world. The modern world is loud. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to reply fast, argue, win meaningless debates, prove their point even if it costs them their own peace. Sometimes silence isn't about running away. It's about taking back your power. It's the language of people who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence makes many uncomfortable because it forces them to sit with their own thoughts, to hear their own noise inside. And that discomfort says more about them than anything you could ever explain. You don't have to explain your absence. It speaks for itself, and the people who feel threatened by it are the ones who relied on your imbalance to hold their control over you. But the most powerful kind of silence isn't the one that disturbs others. It's the silence that rebuilds you from within. It's the silence that connects you to something deeper than other people's approval. It's in that quiet internal space, away from other people's demands, that you start to recover your life energy and reconnect with your real self. It's not enough just to cut off the noise outside. You have to relearn how to use your energy wisely, to choose where it goes, where it stays, and most of all, where it should never be wasted. It's time to become selective with your own soul. If you're already in the process of reclaiming your energy and setting boundaries, you'll start to see the real value of doing this. Knowing this in your head isn't enough if in practice you're still saying yes when you want to say no, still answering messages that drain you, still taking part in empty conversations, still keeping relationships that exist only out of habit. Awareness without action is just another way of lying to yourself. Real change begins when you make the firm decision to become selective. This takes emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being open to everyone, at any time, for any reason. It's about taking control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. And it begins with small actions, not replying immediately, taking a breath before reacting, walking away from a discussion before it pulls you into chaos, turning off your phone without feeling guilty, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I won't get involved. And here's the key. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't owe anyone anything except yourself. For many, this is unforgivable, because when you stop explaining yourself, you take away their power to keep you inside an emotional story where you're always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. Carl Jung understood that every process of becoming whole goes through a kind of isolation. But it's not a sad or depressive isolation, it's a sacred isolation. A time of inner retreat where you relearn how to listen to your own voice without the noise of the world, where you rebuild your identity not from other people's eyes but from your own center. A good way to measure your growth is to watch who starts to drift away when you become more private. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of having changed when you finally start protecting yourself. These aren't signs you're doing something wrong, they're proof that you're freeing yourself. Being less available feels strange at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll think you're being selfish. You'll hear people say you're being too harsh. But that's part of breaking down the old patterns. You've spent a lifetime being trained to put yourself second. It's natural for change to bring discomfort, not only for you, but for everyone who benefited from your old way of living. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. When you leave a toxic environment, you're telling yourself that your peace matters more than any fake connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you start being respected, even if it's by only a few. But not everyone is ready for this new presence. Your emotional absence will show wounds they don't want to see. It will show how much they relied on your chaos to feel in control. And this is the moment when the break happens. With that break comes pain, loneliness, distance. You might feel like you're losing something when in truth you're freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What's born from the silence? This is where the rebirth begins. The rebirth that only happens when you're brave enough to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole by yourself. This is when you start to understand why the solitude of the strong is the path to real freedom. When you stop being available to everyone, something deep starts to happen. First, there's silence, an uncomfortable silence that feels like it's shouting inside you. You question yourself. Did I do the right thing? Am I being too harsh? Am I losing people who cared about me? But slowly that silence changes. It starts to clean, to calm, to heal. And then comes solitude, but not the kind that feels empty. This solitude is full. It's the presence of your own self. It's the solitude of someone who no longer betrays themselves just to keep others near. And in that space where there was once confusion, clarity enters. Where there was once anxiety, peace enters. Where there was once neediness, a new kind of strength arrives. The strength of being whole inside yourself. Jung said that becoming who you really are requires stepping away from the collective, taking off the mask, walking alone for a time. And that's exactly what you're doing when you choose to become unavailable. You're not running from the world. You're coming back to yourself. This is when you stop being shaped by circumstances and begin to shape your reality from the inside out. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence are showing that they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. And now that you no longer fit into that role, they don't know what to do with you. And that's a kind of freedom. You will lose people, but you'll find yourself. You'll walk away from places, but you'll reconnect with your essence. You'll be misunderstood, but at last you'll start to be respected, because when you're no longer available for anything and everything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. And don't mistake this for loss. This is a rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you're no longer available for emotional crumbs, for games, for emptiness disguised as love. Now you only accept what fits with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. If you've made it this far, it means a part of you is already ready for this path. A part of you already knows that being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to get it. True self-respect begins when you choose yourself, even if it means being alone for a while. Now ask yourself, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even disliked for the sake of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message reached you, if it makes sense to you, say it out loud or write it down. I choose my peace. This is how you start to step into a new chapter.